Hey guys, welcome back to Sleep into Power. I am NJ, and let me just say that there is a moment, repeated billions of times across the world every single day, that almost nobody ever witnesses. A person closes their eyes, their lips begin to move, or they do not move at all, and they speak, silently or aloud, to something they cannot see. It happens in hospital corridors at 3 in the morning. It happens in aeroplane seats during turbulence, in the hands of people who have not prayed since childhood. It happens beside cots where new parents watch their babies breathe, and beside beds where grown children hold the hands of parents who are leaving. It happens in traffic. It happens in exam halls. It happens in the quiet seconds before difficult conversations, and in the long hours after them. Some of these people would tell you they are speaking to God. Others would say they are addressing the divine, or a higher intelligence, or the universe, or life itself. Some would admit, if you asked them gently, that they have no idea who or what they are speaking to. They only know that in certain moments, something inside them turns towards the unseen and begins to speak. This is one of the oldest and most universal behaviors our species has ever practiced. It appears in the earliest written records we possess. It appears on clay tablets from Mesopotamia, in the hymns of ancient Egypt, in the Vedas of India, in the Psalms of the Hebrew Bible, in the whispered devotions of every civilization that has left us any trace of its inner life. Long before humanity agreed on almost anything else, it seems we were already doing this, already closing our eyes, already speaking into the silence. And yet here is the strange thing. For a practice so ancient and so widespread, most of us were taught remarkably little about it. If you were raised in a religious home, you were probably taught the words of prayer, set prayers, learned by heart, recited at meals or at bedtime, or in places of worship. If you were raised outside religion, you may have been taught nothing at all, and yet found yourself praying anyway, awkwardly and without instruction, on the worst night of your life. Either way, most of us absorbed one central assumption about what prayer is. We learned that prayer is asking. You need something. You are afraid of something. You want something. And so you ask. Asking is not wrong. We will spend time tonight honoring how honest and human it is to ask. But tucked inside the world's great contemplative traditions, and echoed in the quiet experience of ordinary people, there has always been another understanding of prayer. A slower one, a deeper one that has less to do with changing our circumstances and more to do with changing the person who meets them. That is the question resting at the center of tonight's journey. What if the most powerful form of prayer is not only asking for something? What if it is entering a state of gratitude, of trust, of surrender, of inner transformation, so that whatever tomorrow brings, we arrive there as someone quieter, steadier, and more open than we were tonight? Before we go further, let me be completely honest with you, because this channel is built on trust. Later tonight, near the end of this journey, you will hear a long, original prayer. It is not an ancient text. It is not a secret scripture, a forbidden manuscript, or a rediscovered relic. It was written for you, for this channel, as an original Sleep into Power prayer, drawing on themes that human beings have always carried into the night: gratitude, forgiveness, trust, surrender, and rest. The phrase in tonight's title, "The Prayer You Were Never Taught," does not describe hidden words. It describes a different way of praying altogether, one that most of us were simply never shown. By the time we arrive at the prayer itself, you will understand exactly what that means. And before anything else, a thank you is owed, because tonight's episode exists thanks to one of you. Some time ago, a subscriber wrote in to suggest that this channel explore prayer, and the idea would not let go. So to the member of this community who asked for tonight, thank you. This one is yours. And it is a small, quiet pleasure of making these documentaries that so many of the best journeys begin exactly this way, with someone in the community wondering aloud. If these are the kinds of ideas that speak to you, the relationship between the mind, the inner life, and the person you are quietly becoming, you may enjoy the Sleep into Power book. It explores sleep, identity, imagination, and the subconscious mind, and it asks how the thoughts and inner experiences we return to most often may gently shape who we become. If you would like to go deeper than a single night's listening allows, you will find the book through the link in the description below. You can also now find Sleep into Power on Spotify, where you can listen to and watch these episodes whenever the night calls for them. The Spotify link is in the description as well. And if you are new here, and you enjoy thoughtful documentaries made for learning, reflection, and peaceful sleep, you are warmly invited to subscribe. This channel exists for exactly these hours, the quiet ones, when the world softens and the mind finally has room to wander. That is everything, no more announcements. From here, the night belongs entirely to the mystery we came for. Wherever this finds you, you are welcome here. It may be late evening where you are, the house finally quiet around you. It may be the small hours, and you are the only one awake on your street. It may be an afternoon on the other side of the world, curtains drawn against the daylight, stealing back some rest. You may be in a city, listening over the distant hum of traffic, or somewhere so quiet you can hear the room itself. Whatever the clock says, wherever on this turning planet you happen to be lying down, this hour is yours now, and nothing about it needs to be different. So let us return to the mystery. A person closes their eyes and speaks to something they cannot see. It has been happening for thousands of years, in every language, on every continent, and beneath all the different words, all the different names, all the different theologies, one question has quietly waited for each generation to ask it again. When we pray, what is really happening? Tonight, as your body grows heavier and your breathing begins to slow, we are going to walk around that question from every side. We will look at where prayer came from, and why it seems to rise in human beings even when no one teaches it. We will look at what prayer has meant across the great traditions of the world. We will look at what modern science can observe when a person prays, and, just as honestly, at what it cannot. We will sit with the hardest question of all, the question of prayers that seem to go unanswered. And then, when the thinking is done and the night has deepened, the documentary will slowly set itself down, and the prayer will begin. You do not need to believe anything in particular to take this journey. You do not need to be certain there is a God, and you do not need to be certain there is not. You only need to be willing to rest here, in the dark, with one of the oldest questions our species has ever asked. The lights can stay low, the day can stay finished. Everything you need for tonight is already here. If you could stand outside time and watch the human story unfold at speed, one behavior would appear again and again in almost every scene, like a thread running through the whole fabric. In the ruins of ancient Sumer, in what is now Iraq, archaeologists have found small statues with wide, upturned eyes and hands clasped at the chest. They are votive figures, thousands of years old, placed in temples to stand in perpetual prayer on behalf of the people who left them there. The worshipper could not remain in the temple all day. Life demanded plowing and trading and raising children, so they left a small stone version of themselves behind, eyes open, hands folded, praying without ceasing. Even then, so long ago, people wanted their prayers to continue after their words had ended. In ancient Egypt, hymns were sung to the sun as it rose, thanking it for returning, asking it to keep faith with the world for one more day. In the Indus Valley and later across India, the hymns of the Vedas were composed, memorized, and passed from voice to voice for centuries before they were ever written down, addressed to the powers behind fire and dawn and storm. In China, offerings and petitions were made to heaven and to ancestors. Across Africa, the Americas, the Pacific and the Arctic, in cultures separated by oceans and millennia, human beings developed rituals of address, ways of speaking to what could not be seen, thanking it, asking it, honoring it, wrestling with it. The world's living traditions carry this inheritance in forms of extraordinary richness, and they do not all understand it the same way. It matters to say that clearly, because prayer is not one thing wearing different costumes. In Judaism, prayer is woven through the rhythm of the day and the year, from the Shema, declaring the oneness of God, to the Amidah, the standing prayer, to the Psalms, which contain nearly every emotion a human being can feel, from radiant gratitude to raw complaint. Jewish prayer has never pretended that faith means only pleasant feelings. Some of its most treasured prayers argue, lament, and question. The relationship is considered strong enough to hold honesty. In Christianity, prayer is understood as relationship with a personal God, expressed in forms that range from the set words of the Lord's Prayer, taught, according to the Gospels, by Jesus himself, to the silent contemplative traditions of the desert monastics, to the spontaneous, conversational prayer of ordinary believers. Within Christianity alone, prayer can look like a cathedral choir, a whispered rosary, a Quaker meeting sitting in complete silence, or a person talking to God in their car. In Islam, Salah, the formal prayer performed 5 times daily, structures the entire day around remembrance of God. It involves the whole body, standing, bowing, prostrating, in a rhythm shared by worshippers around the world. Alongside it exists dua, personal supplication, in which a Muslim may ask, thank, confess, or simply speak from the heart. And within Sufi traditions, the practice of dhikr, the repeated remembrance of the divine name, becomes a form of prayer that can fill hours, polishing the heart, as some Sufi teachers have described it, the way a cloth polishes a mirror. In Hindu traditions, prayer takes countless forms, reflecting the vastness of the tradition itself. There is puja, ritual worship and offering. There is japa, the repetition of a mantra or divine name, often counted on beads. There is kirtan and bhajan, devotional singing. There is silent meditation on the divine within. For some Hindus, prayer addresses a deeply personal deity. For others, it is a movement towards the ultimate reality that underlies all appearances. The tradition holds both, and much more besides, without embarrassment. In Buddhist traditions, the picture is different again, and it would be careless to flatten it. Many schools of Buddhism do not center on petitioning a creator God at all, and yet Buddhist life is full of practices that look and feel like prayer. Chanting, bowing, the recitation of sutras, the offering of incense, the turning of prayer wheels, the dedication of merit to the welfare of all beings, and heartfelt aspiration, the wish, formally expressed, that all beings may be free from suffering. Whether one calls these prayer or practice, they belong unmistakably to the same family of human behavior, the deliberate turning of the heart towards something larger than the self. And beyond all the organized traditions, there have always been the unaffiliated, the uncertain, and the quietly private. The people who say they are not religious, but who talk to their late mother in the garden. The people who whisper thank you to no one in particular when the scan comes back clear. The people who, in the words of so many, do not really pray, except that sometimes, on certain nights, they do. This is what makes prayer such a strange and compelling subject. It refuses to stay inside religion. It keeps escaping into ordinary life. And it escapes, most reliably, at the extremes of that life. Notice where prayer clusters. It gathers around births, when people who cannot explain what they believe find themselves whispering thanks over a small new head. It gathers around weddings and harvests and homecomings, wherever joy grows too large for the words joy usually wears. It gathers, above all, around grief and danger, in waiting rooms, at gravesides, in the long nights of illness, in storms at sea. And it gathers around awe on mountain summits and under desert skies, where people report a sensation that is almost physical, of needing to say something to the vastness and having nothing adequate to say. There is a pattern in all of this. Prayer tends to appear exactly where ordinary language fails. Everyday speech is a tool built for everyday sizes, for arranging meetings and describing weather. Confront it with the birth of a child or the death of a parent, and it buckles. Thank you is suddenly too small. I am sad is an insult to the ocean it points at. And in that gap where the feeling exceeds the vocabulary, human beings have always reached for another register entirely. Speech aimed beyond the room, at whatever might be large enough to receive what the heart is actually carrying. Prayer, seen this way, is what language does when it runs out of language, which may be why it belongs so naturally to the edges of the day, and to nights like this one. The edges are where the big feelings live. Why, though? Why does this behavior appear so persistently, across so many unconnected cultures, in so many unconnected centuries? Some scholars suggest that prayer is learned, passed down like language, a cultural inheritance we absorb before we can evaluate it, and that is surely part of the truth. A child who watches her grandmother light candles and murmur blessings is being given a template for the inner life. But cultural learning alone struggles to explain everything. It struggles to explain why people with no religious upbringing find themselves praying in emergencies, fluently, as if remembering something they were never taught. It struggles to explain why prayer so often surges up at the exact moments when ordinary language collapses, in grief too large for sentences, in gratitude too bright for thank you notes, in fear that has no one to be addressed to, and addresses someone anyway. There seems to be something in us, call it a need for meaning, a hunger for connection, an instinct for hope, that reaches beyond the visible when the visible is not enough. Whether that reaching is answered from beyond, or whether it is the human heart speaking to its own depths, is a question we will hold carefully all night, without forcing it closed. For now, simply notice this. You are lying down at the end of your day, listening to a voice talk about prayer, and you are part of an unbroken human lineage that stretches back past the pyramids, past the first cities, past the first written words. People have always brought their days to a close like this, setting things down, turning inward, speaking, or preparing to speak, into the great silence that surrounds every life. Whatever else prayer may be, it is one of the oldest conversations in the world, and tonight, in your own way, you are joining it. Ask 100 people what prayer is, and you will hear 100 variations of the same answer. Prayer is talking to God. Prayer is asking for help. Prayer is saying the words you were taught as a child. All of these are true, as far as they go. But spend time with the world's contemplative literature, or simply with people who have prayed for many decades, and the definition begins to widen until it can hardly hold its own edges. There is petition, the prayer of asking, help me, heal her, protect them, show me what to do. It is probably the form most of us met first, and we will give it its full dignity shortly. There is gratitude, the prayer of thanksgiving. Thank you for this food, this morning, this child, this reprieve, this ordinary Tuesday that I almost forgot to notice. There is praise, which is subtly different from gratitude. Gratitude says thank you for what I have received. Praise simply marvels at what is. It is the prayer of the person standing under a night sky, saying nothing that asks for anything, only expressing wonder. There is confession, the prayer of honesty. Here is what I did. Here is what I have been carrying. Here is the version of events I have been hiding, even from myself. In many traditions, confession is less about informing the divine, which is presumed to know already, and more about the strange relief of finally telling the truth out loud. There is intercession, praying for others, the mother praying for her son, the congregation praying for a stranger in the news, the nurse who, without any formal belief, finds herself silently wishing her patients well as she walks the ward at night. There is contemplation, the prayer that uses few words or none, simply being present, attentive, open, in what practitioners across traditions have described as a kind of resting in the presence of the divine, or resting in being itself. There is ritual prayer, the set words and movements repeated daily or weekly, which skeptics sometimes dismiss as empty repetition, but which practitioners often describe very differently. The familiar words, they say, are like a well-worn path through a forest. You do not have to invent the route each time. The path carries you, especially on the days when you are too tired or too broken to find your own way. And there is the wordless prayer of extremity, the one that is barely language at all, the single syllable, the exhaled please, the tears that stand in for sentences. More than one tradition has taught that these may be the truest prayers of all, precisely because there is nothing performed in them. Once you see this range, a quiet question begins to form. If prayer can be all of these things, where exactly does it end? Can attention become prayer? When you listen to someone with your whole presence, without rehearsing your reply, without glancing at your phone, giving them the rare gift of being fully received, is something prayer-like happening in that attention? Some contemplatives have thought so. They have suggested that attention, complete and undivided, is close to the heart of what prayer is. Can gratitude become prayer, even when it is not addressed to anyone? The lump in the throat at a kindness you did not expect. The moment you look at your sleeping family and feel something rise in your chest that has nowhere official to go. If you let that feeling fill you completely, does it matter whether you attached a name to its recipient? Can action become prayer? There is an old idea, appearing in different clothing across many traditions, that how we treat people is a form of address to the sacred. That feeding the hungry, comforting the grieving, forgiving the person who cannot repay you, may be prayers spoken with the hands rather than the mouth. The way someone lives, in this view, can become the answer to what they once asked for. The person who prayed for years to become patient, and then quietly became the most patient person in the family, may have had their prayer answered through their own slow transformation. And can silence become prayer? Not the awkward silence of having nothing to say, but the full silence of having said everything, and remaining, staying in the room after the words run out. Many of the deepest practitioners across many centuries have insisted that this is where prayer truly begins, and that everything before it is preparation. We should be honest about what kind of claims these are. They are not scientific findings. They are philosophical and spiritual possibilities, ways of seeing that generations of thoughtful people have found true to their experience. You are free to try them on slowly, the way you might try on a coat, and notice whether anything in you recognizes the fit. But notice what has already happened in this chapter. Prayer began as a narrow word, a request spoken upward, and it has been quietly widening until it starts to look less like a single activity and more like a whole orientation of the heart, a way of being turned towards gratitude rather than grievance, turned towards honesty rather than performance, turned towards others rather than only the self, turned towards the mystery at the edge of every life, rather than pretending the edge is not there. Hold that widening gently as you rest, because the prayer waiting for you at the end of tonight belongs to this larger understanding. And to appreciate why it matters, we first need to look honestly at the version of prayer most of us actually learned. Think back, if you can, to the first prayer you ever knew about. Perhaps you were taught it. Perhaps you only overheard it. Perhaps you invented it yourself, kneeling on a floor somewhere, improvising in the dark. For an enormous number of people, in every tradition and in none, the first prayer follows the same essential shape. Please help me. Please fix this. Please let it be all right. Please give me what I need. It is worth pausing on how natural this is. A child's earliest relationships are built on asking. The infant cries, and food comes. The toddler reaches upward, and arms descend. Long before we have theology, we have this deep bodily knowledge. I am small, the world is large, and there are powers greater than me who can help if they choose. When a child first prays, they are pouring that knowledge into new words. And when an adult prays in crisis, something of that early posture returns. We become, for a moment, small again, reaching upward. Some voices, both religious and secular, have been unkind about this. The prayer of asking has been mocked as a cosmic wish list, dismissed as spiritual immaturity, treated as the childish thing that serious practitioners eventually outgrow. Tonight, we will not join that mockery, because it misunderstands something important. To ask is to admit need, and admitting need is one of the hardest, most honest things a human being can do. The father who prays, "Please let the treatment work," is not being childish. He is being truthful about the limits of his power in the one arena where he would give anything to be powerful. The woman who prays, "Please help me get through this week," has stopped performing self-sufficiency, if only for a sentence. There is a vulnerability in asking that deserves respect, not condescension. In many traditions, this kind of raw petition is honored precisely because it is unguarded. It is the heart with its armor off. So the question tonight is never whether asking is legitimate. It is whether asking is the whole of prayer, or its doorway. Because those who have prayed for a long time often describe a gradual change. Not away from asking, but around it. The asking remains, but other rooms open off the hallway. Gratitude appears, and begins arriving before the requests instead of after them. Listening appears, the strange practice of praying with the ears rather than the mouth. Confession appears, and with it a new honesty about one's own part in one's own storms. And eventually, for many, surrender appears, the hardest room to enter, where the prayer becomes less, "Give me what I want," and more, "Make me able to meet what comes." There is a useful distinction hiding here, and it is worth carrying with you into sleep. It is the difference between praying from fear and praying with fear. Praying from fear means fear is doing the talking. The prayer becomes a bargaining session, a frantic scanning of the sky, a list of disasters to be averted, each one rehearsed in vivid detail. Anyone who has spent a sleepless night in this kind of prayer knows that it can leave you more frightened than you began, because you have spent an hour giving your fears your full, eloquent attention. Praying with fear is different. The fear is not denied. It is named, honestly, sometimes bluntly. "I am afraid. I do not know how this ends." And then, having told the truth, the prayer chooses where to place its weight, not on the catalogue of possible catastrophes, but on the request for strength, for wisdom, for steadiness, for the ability to do what can be done and endure what cannot. The fear is present in both prayers, but in the first, fear is the author. In the second, it is only a character. One thing must be said plainly before this chapter closes, because it matters deeply, and it will matter again later tonight. Nothing in this exploration should ever suggest that people cause their own tragedies by praying incorrectly, believing insufficiently, or thinking the wrong thoughts. That idea has caused immense and unnecessary pain. Illness is not a punishment for weak faith. Loss is not the invoice for negativity. The rain, as an old observation has it, falls on everyone. People of towering faith have suffered terribly, and people who never prayed a word in their lives have flourished. Any philosophy of prayer that blames the wounded for their wounds has taken a wrong turning, and we will not take it tonight. What we can say, gently, is this: while prayer may not control what happens to us, the way we pray may quietly shape the person that things happen to. The one who spends the night rehearsing disaster, and the one who spends the night asking for steadiness, may wake to the same morning, but they may not meet it as the same person. That thought, which prayer might work first on the one who prays, opens a door that modern science has begun, cautiously, to look through. And that is where we go next. Slowly, there is no hurry. The night is long, and it is holding you. For most of history, prayer was studied by theologians, described by mystics, and practiced by everyone in between. Only very recently, within living memory, has it also become something else, a subject of laboratory research. Over the past few decades, scientists have invited monks, nuns, ministers, and ordinary practitioners into brain scanners and asked them to do the thing they do: to pray, to meditate, to chant, to contemplate, to rest in silent devotion, while machines listen to the quiet electrical and metabolic weather of their brains. Before we look at what such research suggests, one caution should stand at the door of this entire chapter. Neuroscience in this area is young. Studies are often small. Practices differ enormously, and so do practitioners. Findings are sometimes mixed, and honest researchers say so. Nothing you are about to hear amounts to proof of anything grand. What it amounts to is a fascinating early sketch, drawn in pencil, of what may be happening within a person at prayer. With that said, several broad themes have emerged from research into prayer, meditation, and related contemplative practices. The first is attention. Many forms of prayer are, whatever else they may be, exercises in focused attention. The mind is given a single object, a phrase, a name, a presence, a breath, and is gently returned to it each time it wanders. Contemplative practices built this way appear to engage the brain's attention networks, and with repetition over time, practitioners often report that sustaining attention becomes easier in prayer and outside it. The second is emotional regulation. Slow, repetitive, familiar practice, especially when combined with slow breathing, is associated with a settling of the body's stress response. Heart rate can ease. Breathing deepens. The system shifts away from vigilance and towards something closer to rest. Anyone who has recited a familiar prayer in a frightening hour has felt some version of this from the inside. The words become a handrail, and the body, gripping it, steadies. The third is repetition itself. From the rosary to japa beads to dhikr, to the Jesus prayer of Eastern Christianity, human traditions independently discovered that repeating sacred words, slowly and rhythmically, does something. Modern research into repetitive contemplative practice suggests such rhythms may quieten the mind's tendency to ruminate, that circular, self-referential churning that so often masquerades as thinking, especially at night. The repeated phrase seems to give the restless mind a task gentle enough to rest inside. The fourth is meaning and connection. Prayer is rarely a neutral exercise. For the practitioner, it is saturated with significance, with relationship, with the sense of being in the presence of something that matters ultimately. Psychologists have long observed that a sense of meaning and connection is associated with resilience, with the capacity to endure difficulty without being hollowed out by it. Prayer, for many people, is one of the primary places that sense is renewed. And the fifth is awe. Certain prayerful states, particularly those arising in vast settings, under night skies, in great buildings, in the presence of birth or death, carry the signature of awe, that expansive emotion in which the self feels smaller and the world feels larger. Research into awe suggests it can soften self-focus and increase feelings of connection and generosity. The traditions did not need laboratories to know this. They built cathedrals and temples with high ceilings anyway. Now, having gathered these threads, we must be careful with them, because this is exactly the point at which popular accounts tend to overreach. It is tempting to conclude that science has explained prayer, reduced it to circuitry and chemistry, or alternatively, that science has validated prayer, proving that someone is listening. Neither conclusion is available, and it is worth understanding why. Correlation is not causation. If people who pray regularly report lower stress, that association could arise for many reasons. Prayer may reduce stress, but calmer people may also be more inclined to pray. Communities of prayer often provide friendship, structure, and support, which carry benefits of their own. Careful researchers try to untangle these threads, and the honest summary is that the tangle is real, and the work continues. More fundamentally, there is a boundary that no scanner can cross. Science may be able to observe some of what prayer does within the brain and the body. It cannot currently determine whether a prayer is heard beyond them. Sit with that boundary for a moment, because it is drawn with precision. When a person prays and their breathing slows, instruments can watch it happen. When attention gathers, when stress hormones settle, when the practiced mind grows quiet, these are events inside a human being, and events inside a human being are, at least in principle, observable. But the believer's central claim was never about events inside a human being. It was that prayer is heard, that there is a listener, and on that question, the instruments have nothing to say, in either direction. A brain scan of a person talking on the telephone looks like a brain talking. It cannot tell you whether anyone picked up. Some find this boundary frustrating. Tonight, you might find it restful instead. It means the believer and the skeptic can lie down under the same findings without either being evicted. The believer may say, "Of course, prayer calms the body. We are made for this conversation." The skeptic may say, "Prayer is a profound human practice with measurable inward effects, and that is remarkable enough." Both can be intellectually honest. Both can sleep. What the research does gently suggest, and what matters most for our journey tonight, is this: prayer, whatever else it is not nothing. Something real happens in the person who prays. Attention gathers, the body settles, rumination loosens its grip, meaning is rehearsed and renewed. And when a practice is repeated night after night, year after year, those small inward events begin to add up to something larger, which raises the next question, the one that carries us deeper into the night. If the words we repeat leave traces in us, then what, exactly, are we rehearsing when we pray? And what might it mean to choose those rehearsals with care, especially in the final minutes before sleep? There is a peculiar intimacy to the last thoughts of the day. In the daylight hours, the mind is crowded. Tasks, messages, other people's voices, the endless administration of being alive. But at night, as the noise recedes, whatever remains has the stage to itself. The final sentences we say to ourselves before sleep are spoken into an unusually quiet room. Psychology has long been interested in inner speech, the continuous, mostly unnoticed narration that runs through a human life. We describe events to ourselves. We interpret other people's faces. We forecast tomorrow, usually several times, usually with revisions. And crucially, this inner speech is not a neutral commentary. It has a tone. It has habits. It has favorite phrases and familiar grooves. Over years, those grooves become part of how a person experiences the world. Anyone who has known a chronic worrier has seen the groove at work. The worry is not reinvented each day. It runs along established lines, the same catastrophes rehearsed in the same order, polished by repetition until they gleam. And anyone who has known a genuinely grateful person has seen the opposite groove. The gratitude is not naive, it is practiced. Somewhere along the line, deliberately or by grace of temperament, that person built the habit of noticing what was given, rather than only what was missing. This is the territory where prayer and psychology quietly overlap. Because prayer, among everything else it may be, is a form of deliberate inner speech. It is the choice to say certain words, in a certain spirit, again and again, and repeated language, over time, appears to influence the patterns of attention, expectation and emotion that we bring to our days. Not magically, not irresistibly, but gradually, the way water influences stone. Here a careful line must be drawn, because this is precisely where popular culture tends to skid into exaggeration. You may have encountered dramatic claims about the mind at night, that the subconscious becomes fully open before sleep, that it is programmable, unable to reject whatever is poured into it, that the drowsy brain will accept any suggestion and dutifully manufacture it into reality. The honest position is gentler and less cinematic. The mind before sleep is not an open vault. You remain yourself, with your own judgments and defenses, drowsy or not. What does seem true is more modest and more human. In the quiet at the end of the day, with the world's demands set down, the words we dwell on face less competition. They are not fighting 40 other inputs for attention. An emotionally meaningful thought, held gently in that quiet, tends to be felt more fully than the same thought at noon. Most of us know this from the dark side of the experience. A worry that would be shrugged off at lunchtime can fill the entire ceiling at midnight. The quiet amplifies whatever we bring into it. And that is exactly why the direction of our nighttime rehearsals matters. Consider two people lying awake with the same uncertainty. Perhaps a medical result due next week. Perhaps a fragile situation at work. Perhaps a strained silence in a family. The first prays, or simply repeats inwardly, some version of, "Please do not let everything go wrong." It is an utterly understandable sentence. But notice what it asks the mind to do. To hold the image of everything going wrong, vividly, as the centerpiece. Night after night, the rehearsal is of catastrophe, with a plea attached. The person rises in the morning having spent their quietest hours in the company of their worst projections. The second person, holding the same uncertainty, prays something like, "Give me the wisdom, strength, and peace to meet whatever comes." The uncertainty has not been denied. Nothing false has been claimed. The result next week is exactly as unknown as before. But the centerpiece of the rehearsal has changed. What is being pictured, night after night, is not the catastrophe, but the self who could meet it. Steadiness is being rehearsed, instead of collapse. Externally, nothing has moved. The letter will say what it says. But something inward has begun to shift, something subtle and cumulative. The person's relationship with uncertainty itself. And since life is, from beginning to end, a long negotiation with uncertainty, that relationship may be one of the most consequential things a human being ever develops. This, perhaps, is one of the quiet mechanisms behind an old piece of wisdom found in many traditions, that prayer changes the one who prays. Not as a consolation prize, not as a polite way of saying nothing happened, but as a real event with real consequences. The words we return to most often, especially in the undefended quiet before sleep, become part of the architecture of the self. Prayers of trust, repeated for years, build differently from prayers of dread repeated for years. Even when the words are aimed at the same sky, none of this settles the great question of whether prayers are heard beyond us. That question keeps its mystery, as it has for thousands of years. But it does mean that every prayer is heard at least once, with perfect attention, by the person praying it. And that listener, we now know, is changed by what it hears. So a practical tenderness emerges from all this theory, and you can feel it already applying to you, here, tonight. It matters what you say to yourself in the dark. Not because the dark is magic, but because the dark is quiet. And in quiet places, words land deeply. Tonight, in a little while, the words you will be offered have been written with exactly that in mind. But before we come to them, there is more of the mystery to walk through. Because prayer does not only involve words, it also involves images, imagination, the inner pictures we make of what we hope for. And the relationship between prayer and imagination is older and stranger than it first appears. Somewhere along the way, the modern world developed a filing system for the inner life. Prayer went into the religion drawer, meditation went into the wellness drawer, visualization went into the performance drawer, next to the sports psychology and the motivational seminars. Neat, separate, labeled. The trouble is that the practices themselves have never respected the filing system. Sit with the rough distinctions first, because they are genuinely useful. Prayer, in most understandings, involves address and relationship. There is a towards in it. Words, gratitude, requests, praise, offered to God, to the divine, to the sacred, however conceived. Meditation, in many of its forms, involves awareness rather than address. Observing the breath, watching thoughts arise and pass, concentrating on a single object. resting in open attention. Visualization involves deliberate inner creation, building images, scenes, and experiences in the imagination, the calm delivery of the speech, the healed body, the reconciled conversation, the person one hopes to become. 3 draws. Except that the moment you look at real traditions and real practitioners, the contents spill everywhere. The Eastern Christian practice of the Jesus Prayer involves repeating a short phrase continuously, with attention gathered in the heart, in a manner any student of mantra meditation would recognize at once. Buddhist metta practice, the cultivation of loving kindness, involves holding people in mind, one by one, and inwardly wishing them well. May you be safe, may you be happy, which sits remarkably close to what other traditions call intercessory prayer. Ignatian spirituality, within Catholic Christianity, explicitly instructs the practitioner to use imagination in prayer, to place themselves inside a scene, to see the faces, hear the voices, feel the dust of the road, and meet the sacred through the constructed inner experience. Sufi practices combine repetition, breath, visualization of the heart, and passionate personal address, all at once, without apology. Hindu traditions have always understood the divine image, outer and inner, as a doorway rather than a distraction. In other words, the great traditions discovered long ago what the filing system obscures, that words, awareness, and imagination are not rival technologies. They are 3 faculties of one instrument, and the deep practices tend to play all 3, which opens a question worth resting inside tonight, without any need to resolve it. Could imagining peace become a form of prayer? Consider what actually happens when a person prays for courage before something difficult. If the prayer is alive, it is rarely words alone. Somewhere in it, faintly or vividly, there is an image, the self walking into the room anyway, the voice steady, the hands still. The prayer for a loved one's healing usually carries a picture of them well, laughing at a kitchen table, restored. The prayer for guidance often includes a glimpse, half-formed, of a path clearing. Petition and imagination arrive together, so entwined that separating them may be artificial. When we ask deeply, we see what we ask for. And consider gratitude. It is possible to say thank you as pure words, a formality, but felt gratitude, the kind that changes the temperature of a room inside you, is an inner experience, not a sentence. It has warmth, imagery, the faces of particular people, the memory of particular mercies. If a person lies in the dark and allows themselves to be filled with that experience, dwelling in it, letting it expand, no words at all, is that prayer? Many traditions would say yes, and not a lesser form of it. A person may pray not only through words, but through the inner experience of gratitude itself. Now, honesty requires a boundary here, and it is the same kind of boundary we drew in the science chapter. There is a popular modern doctrine which claims that imagination directly controls external reality, that the universe reads our mental pictures like purchase orders and ships accordingly. Tonight makes no such claim. Whether reality answers imagination is a metaphysical question, and it will still be a mystery when the sun rises. What can be said, more modestly, is what we have already seen. The inner experiences we return to repeatedly become part of us. The person who nightly imagines themselves calm, generous, and steady is rehearsing calm, generosity, and steadiness, and rehearsal has a way of surfacing in performance. The imagination may or may not move the world. It demonstrably helps shape the one who moves through the world. Perhaps that is the most graceful way to hold all 3 practices as you grow sleepier. Words to say what the heart means, awareness to keep the saying honest, imagination to let the heart feel what it hopes for, in advance, as a way of becoming ready for it. The prayer that awaits you near the end of tonight is built exactly this way. It will give you words, it will leave you space, and it will invite your imagination, gently, to rest inside what the words describe. But before we go deeper into the heart's territory, it is worth pausing on the hour itself. Because this hour, the one you are lying in right now, turns out to have a very long history of its own. Of all the moments in the human day, this is the one that the world's traditions chose, again and again, for their most tender prayers. And once you see why, the last stretch of tonight's journey will make a different kind of sense. Before we enter the most emotional country of the night, it is worth noticing something about the hour you are in right now. Because of all the times human beings have chosen to pray, none has been chosen more consistently across more traditions than this one, the edge of sleep. The great traditions did not treat bedtime as an afterthought. They treated it as a threshold, and they built prayers for it with remarkable care. In Jewish practice, there is the bedtime Shema, the recitation before sleep of the tradition's central declaration, often accompanied by prayers that do something quietly extraordinary. They include the forgiveness of anyone who caused hurt during the day. Before sleep, the ledger is deliberately cleared. The idea is that a person should not carry the day's grievances across the border of the night. The Talmudic sages, who thought carefully about sleep, described it as a fraction of death, a nightly rehearsal of surrender, and the morning blessings answer it with gratitude for the soul's return. Sleep, in this vision, is not lost time. It is a nightly act of trust, framed by prayer on both banks. In Christian monastic tradition, the final prayer service of the day is called compline, from a Latin word meaning completion. It is, in effect, the Church's official bedtime prayer, and it has been sung at nightfall for some 15 centuries. Compline is brief, dark, and astonishingly gentle. Its themes are exactly the ones this night has been circling. The day is ended. Faults are confessed and released. Protection is asked for the hours of darkness, and rest is entrusted to hands larger than one's own. Monks describe the great silence that follows compline, in which no one speaks until morning, as one of the most cherished parts of monastic life. The last words of the day, they found, matter enough to choose them carefully, and then to let silence guard them. In Islam, the day's final formal prayer, Isha, is performed at night, and tradition records bedtime supplications in which the sleeper lies down entrusting themselves to God, acknowledging that they may or may not rise, and choosing trust either way. There is also the practice, among the devout, of ending the day in brief self-examination and remembrance, so that the heart crosses into sleep facing the right direction. In Hindu households, the day commonly closes with evening lamps and prayers, and many practitioners are taught to let a sacred name or verse be the last thing held in the mind before sleep, on the understanding that the mind's final resting place at night colors the quality of the night itself. Buddhist practitioners, similarly, are often encouraged to fall asleep within a wholesome state of mind, in loving kindness or calm recollection, gently arranged like a room being tidied before the lights go out. Stand back from the details, and something striking appears. Cultures that agreed on very little, separated by geography, theology, and centuries, converged on the same handful of instincts about this hour. Complete the day. Do not just abandon it. Release quarrels before sleeping on them. Give thanks. Entrust the defenseless hours to something, and choose with care the final furniture of the mind. Why the convergence? Partly, no doubt, because night has always been the honest hour. Darkness strips the schedule away and leaves people alone with what the daylight helped them avoid. Fear grows articulate at night. So does grief. So sometimes does wonder. The traditions noticed that human beings need something to do with all of that, some way of setting it down rather than lying beneath it, and prayer at the day's edge became the tool. But there may be a simpler reason too, one you can feel in your own body at this moment. Falling asleep requires exactly what prayer, in its deeper forms, has been teaching all night. Release, trust, surrender, the unclenching of the hand. The traditions place their most surrendered prayers at bedtime because bedtime is when surrender is not optional. Every sleeper performs it. The night prayers simply perform it consciously, gracefully, with gratitude attached. turning a biological necessity into a small nightly ceremony of trust. You are keeping that watch now, whether you meant to or not. By listening to these ideas at this hour, letting the day complete itself behind you, you have joined the compline of the world, the vast unseen congregation of people in every time zone who are ending this same day by turning briefly towards the deep things before they sleep. Some are kneeling, some are murmuring in the dark, some are simply lying still, like you, letting a voice carry the thinking for them. It is good company to fall asleep in, and it points us directly at the next question, because if the last thoughts of the day deserve such care, then perhaps the most important discovery of the whole night is what those thoughts might best contain. The traditions, as we have just seen, kept placing one thing near the top of the list, ahead of almost everything else, and it was not asking, it was thanksgiving, gratitude, offered at the day's end, before tomorrow's answers have arrived. Why gratitude of all things? And why before the answer? That question deserves a chapter of its own, and it is the most beautiful chapter we have left. Of all the movements a praying heart can make, gratitude may seem the simplest. A gift arrives, and we say thank you. It requires no theology. Children manage it before they can tie their shoes. But look closer, and gratitude turns out to have depths that are anything but simple. Because there are, broadly, two kinds of thank you, and the second one is among the most quietly radical acts a human being can perform. The first kind is gratitude for what has already arrived. The meal on the table, the friend who called, the test result that came back kind, the years you had with someone, even though the years ended. This gratitude looks backwards, at gifts received, and it is precious beyond measure. Entire traditions have built daily disciplines around it, and modern psychology has spent decades confirming what grandmothers always knew, that people who regularly notice what they have been given tend to carry their lives differently from people who only audit what is missing. Not because their lives contain more, but because their attention does. The second kind of gratitude is stranger. It looks forwards, or rather, it looks into the unresolved present, and gives thanks there, before the answer, before the outcome, before there is anything obvious to give thanks for. You find traces of this in many traditions. Prayers that begin with thanksgiving, even in the middle of hardship. Blessings recited in the darkness as faithfully as in the light. Table graces said over meager tables. It appears in ordinary lives too, in people who have somehow learned to say thank you for this day, in the middle of a day that is breaking their heart. What is happening in that kind of thank you? It is clearly not a statement of fact about circumstances. The circumstances may be terrible. It is not denial, at least not in its healthy form, because the people who pray this way are often piercingly clear-eyed about their situations. Something else is being expressed, something closer to trust, a declaration, made in advance of the evidence, that life has not stopped being a gift merely because this stretch of it is hard, that there is still something here worth receiving, even if it cannot yet be named. Here the ground becomes delicate, and we must walk it with care, because two distortions wait on either side of the path. The first distortion says, gratitude before the answer is a technique, and if performed correctly, it forces the outcome. Give thanks, as though it has already happened, and it must happen. This claim is made often and confidently, and tonight will not make it. No honest person can promise that gratitude guarantees results. People have given thanks with their whole hearts and still lost what they loved. To sell gratitude as a lever is to set people up for a second grief on top of the first, the grief of believing they operated the machinery wrongly. The second distortion says, gratitude requires pretending, that to be thankful, you must plaster a smile over your fear, declare the pain a blessing before you mean it, and hustle your grief out of the room because it spoils the mood. This too is false, and it is worth saying so slowly, because someone listening tonight may need to hear it. Gratitude and grief can live in the same heart at the same time. They do it constantly. A person can be thankful for 20 years of love, while weeping that there will not be 21. A person can hope for healing while being honest about fear. A person can trust, deeply and genuinely, and still lie awake with questions. These are not contradictions or failures of faith. They are what a full-sized human heart looks like from the inside. The widow who says, "I am so grateful, and I am so sad," in a single breath, is not confused. She may understand gratitude better than anyone in the room. So what is left, once we refuse both distortions? Something quieter and sturdier than either. Not gratitude as leverage, not gratitude as performance, gratitude as orientation, a way of standing in an unresolved life. Perhaps gratitude is not always a declaration that everything has already happened exactly as we wanted. Sometimes gratitude is the decision to recognize that life still contains meaning, possibility, and something worth receiving. Read that way. Thank you before the answer is not a magic word. It is a posture of the spirit. It says, "I do not know how this resolves, and I am choosing to remain open-handed rather than clench-fisted while I wait." It changes the emotional weather of the waiting itself. Desperation waits by gripping. Trust waits by receiving whatever small good arrives in the meantime. The cup of tea, the kind nurse, the unreasonable beauty of an ordinary sunset that had no business showing up on such a difficult day. And notice what this does to prayer. A prayer that consists only of requests is a list of what is missing. A prayer that begins in gratitude starts from what is present and asks from fullness rather than from famine. The requests may be identical, the heart making them is not. Tonight, when the prayer comes, gratitude will arrive early in it, before the asking. Now you know why. It is not etiquette, it is architecture. But gratitude, for all its depth, mostly concerns our own lives. And prayer has never been content to stop at the borders of the self. In every tradition, in every century, people have knelt down and spent their words on someone else entirely. That instinct, the prayer that reaches outward, is where the night takes us next. There is a phrase used by Quakers that deserves to be more widely known. When someone is in difficulty, a Quaker may say, "I am holding you in the light." It is a gentle expression, but it names something vast. Because of all the forms prayer takes, none is more universal than this one, the prayer for someone else. Intercession, the traditions call it. The mother whose child is traveling. The man whose old friend is in surgery 3 time zones away. The stranger who reads a headline about people they will never meet, in a country they will never visit, and feels something in them reach out anyway. Why do we do this? On a strictly practical accounting, it can look almost absurd. The surgeon does not operate better because someone in another city has closed their eyes, and yet the impulse is nearly irresistible. When someone we love is suffering beyond our reach, doing nothing feels unbearable, and prayer presents itself as the thing that can be done when nothing can be done. It is love's refusal to be useless. That refusal tells us something about what human beings are. We are porous to each other. Another person's pain gets into us. Empathy is not a policy we adopt. It is a weather system we live inside. And when empathy meets powerlessness, when we care intensely about an outcome we cannot influence, the pressure has to go somewhere. For countless people, across every tradition and none, it goes upward, or outward, or inward, into prayer. Please watch over her. Please be with them. Please let him not be alone in this. Now, this is a subject where honesty is owed, because intercessory prayer is one of the few areas of prayer that science has tried to test directly, and the story of that research is worth telling straight. Over the years, researchers have conducted controlled studies of intercessory prayer, typically in medical settings. Groups of patients, often recovering from cardiac procedures, were prayed for by strangers at a distance, while comparison groups were not, and researchers then looked for differences in recovery. It sounds simple. It was anything but. The studies varied in design and quality, and their findings have been mixed and contested. Some early studies reported modest differences and were criticized on methodological grounds. Larger and more rigorous trials generally found no reliable effect of distant intercessory prayer on medical outcomes. Taken together, the research has not established clear proof that prayer reliably changes external events. What should a thoughtful person do with that? Two tempting shortcuts should both be refused. The first shortcut is mockery. See, prayer does nothing, case closed. But this concludes more than the evidence allows, and most serious believers would add that it also misunderstands what they were claiming. Few traditions ever taught that prayer functions as a mechanism, a button that reliably produces outcomes when pressed by strangers under experimental conditions. A believer is free to hold, quite consistently, that a God worth the name is not a vending machine, and was never going to behave like one in a clinical trial. One can find that framing persuasive or not, but it is not evasion invented after the fact. It reflects what prayer has meant inside these traditions all along, relationship rather than machinery. The second shortcut is overclaiming in the other direction, insisting that prayer has been scientifically vindicated as a treatment. It has not, and pretending otherwise does faith no favors. And it should be said with complete clarity: prayer is not a substitute for medicine, for surgeons, for therapy, for picking up the telephone. The traditions themselves, at their best, have always known this. Pray for the sick and call the doctor. Hold them in the light, and also hold their hand. So the external question, whether intercession changes outcomes in the world, remains where so much of tonight has remained: open, unproven, unrefuted, a genuine mystery. Absence of proof, as the careful thinkers remind us, is not proof of absence. The honest position is simply that we do not know. But while the external question stays open, something else has been quietly visible all along, and it may be the most important thing in this chapter. Watch what praying for someone does to the person praying. To pray for someone, you must first hold them in mind, fully, attentively, not as a problem or a task, but as a person. You picture their face. You remember what they are carrying. You wish them well with your whole attention. Do this daily, and something starts to happen to you. Resentments become harder to maintain. It is remarkably difficult to pray sincerely for someone and stay coldly angry with them, which is presumably why more than one tradition assigns prayer for one's enemies as a discipline. Compassion, exercised nightly, grows like any exercised thing, and intercession has a way of turning into logistics. The person who prays for a lonely neighbor every evening eventually finds themselves knocking on the door with soup. The prayer did not replace the action, it incubated it. So consider this question and let it stay with you as the night deepens. If prayer makes us more willing to comfort, forgive, help, or simply remain beside someone, has something meaningful already occurred? Because whatever is or is not happening in the heavens, something is verifiably happening on the ground. Love is being organized. Attention is being trained on the suffering of others. People are being remembered who would otherwise be forgotten, sometimes by the very act of remembering them in prayer. And later tonight, in the prayer itself, you will be invited to do exactly this: to gather the people you love, and some you have never met, and hold them, for a few unhurried minutes, in the light. Yet we cannot go to that prayer honestly without first passing through the hardest country on tonight's map. Because everyone who has prayed for someone has also, sooner or later, met the silence, the prayer that seemed to go unanswered, the outcome that came anyway. If we are to speak truthfully about prayer, we must speak about that too, gently, but truthfully. Every honest conversation about prayer eventually arrives here, at the door nobody wants to open. Someone prayed for their marriage, and it ended. Someone prayed for their mother, and the funeral came anyway. Someone prayed every night of their childhood for the shouting downstairs to stop, and it did not stop. If you have lived any length of life, you have your own entries for this ledger, and no philosophy worth listening to at midnight would pretend otherwise. So let us not pretend. Let us sit with the real questions, the ones people carry for decades and rarely say aloud. Why do some prayers appear to be answered while others do not? Why does one family get the miracle, and the family in the next room get the chaplain? Does the silence mean no one is listening? Does it mean the prayer was defective, the faith too thin, the words wrong? Begin with that last question, because it has an answer, and the answer is no. There is a cruel idea that circulates wherever prayer is discussed, sometimes crudely, sometimes dressed in respectable clothing. It says that outcomes track faith, that the healed believed harder than the buried. That tragedy is evidence of insufficient belief, incorrect technique, negative thinking, a prayer filed improperly. Tonight, let this be said as plainly as anything will be said all night. That idea is false, and it is harmful, and it deserves no place in any serious understanding of prayer. It adds a second wound to people already wounded, handing the grieving a homework assignment of self-blame, and it is contradicted by the entire sweep of human experience, in which saints have suffered and the indifferent have prospered since records began. The most honored spiritual literature in the world knows this. The Book of Job is an extended refusal of the idea that suffering must be deserved. The Psalms are full of faithful people demanding to know why God is far off. Whatever unanswered prayer means, the traditions themselves, at their deepest, do not teach that it means the sufferer failed. But if we clear away that cruelty, the mystery underneath remains, and it is genuinely a mystery. We should resist the urge to solve it with a tidy sentence, because every tidy sentence breaks on somebody's real grief. Believers have offered frameworks across the centuries, that the answer was no, and no is an answer, that the timing serves purposes we cannot see, that free human beings and a physical world could not be constantly overridden without unmaking both, that the divine perspective differs from ours, as an ocean differs from a harbor. Some people find deep shelter in these frameworks. Others find them thin exactly when the wind is highest. Tonight does not adjudicate. Tonight simply notes that after several thousand years, the wisest voices in every tradition still approach this question on their knees, without a flowchart. Perhaps the honest human position before suffering is not explanation but presence. Mystery, allowed to remain mystery. And yet, and here the chapter turns, unanswered is a strange word when you listen closely to the people who have lived through it. Ask them, years later. Not everyone, and nothing said tonight should gloss anyone's pain. But again and again, people who prayed desperately for one thing report having received, gradually, something they did not pray for. The strength that arrived when strength was impossible. The endurance measured out day by day. Never a surplus, never a shortfall. The clarity about what actually mattered, which burned away a decade of trivia in a single season. The people, and this one is nearly universal, the specific, particular people who appeared and stayed and sat in waiting rooms. The capacity, discovered late and to one's own astonishment, to accept what could not be changed, and to find that acceptance was not defeat, but a different kind of standing. None of that is the miracle they requested. It would be obscene to tell someone it is just as good. Often it is not, and they would trade it back in a heartbeat. But it is not nothing, and the people themselves are usually the first to say so. The prayer for rescue was not answered. Something answered anyway, which suggests that we may be measuring prayer with too short a ruler. We check whether the world changed by Friday, but there was always a second place to look. Perhaps prayer cannot always be measured by whether the world immediately changes. Sometimes its first effect is that the person facing the world is no longer quite the same. Hold that sentence loosely. It is not offered as the solution to the mystery, because the mystery does not have one that fits in a sentence. It is offered as a widening of vision. The parent who prayed for years at a hospital bedside may tell you, cautiously, that they became someone in those years, someone with a depth of patience and a fierceness of love they did not previously contain. They would never say the suffering was worth it. They will say they were changed. Both things are true, and mature spirituality has always had room for both. There is one more thing the silence can teach, and then we will let this chapter rest. The people who continue to pray after devastating loss are sometimes asked why. Their answers rarely mention outcomes. They speak instead of connection, of not being alone in the dark, of a place to bring the weight, of the difference between suffering inside a relationship and suffering inside a void. Whether that relationship extends beyond them or dwells within them, tonight cannot say, and neither can anyone else. But it appears to hold. It appears to be, for millions of people, the thing that holds when nothing else does. You may be carrying an unanswered prayer of your own tonight. Most people are. You are not asked to resolve it before you sleep. You are not asked to reframe it, be grateful for it, or find its silver lining by morning. It can simply lie down with you, acknowledged, unsolved, respected. Some questions are not doors to be forced, but companions to be walked with, sometimes for years, sometimes for a lifetime. And strangely, it is exactly here, at the far edge of what asking can do, that prayer reveals its quietest and perhaps most powerful form. When we have asked everything askable, and the sky has kept its counsel, a different movement becomes possible. Not giving up, something else entirely. The traditions call it surrender, and it is almost universally misunderstood. It is where we go next, as the night grows softer around you. Surrender is a word with a public relations problem. In everyday speech, it means defeat, the white flag, the end of trying. So when the contemplative traditions speak of surrender as the summit of prayer, the modern ear hears something like, give up, stop caring, let life do what it wants to you. That is almost the opposite of what is meant. And because surrender sits at the very heart of the prayer waiting for you tonight, it is worth taking the time, in this drowsy hour, to rescue the word. Picture two hands. The first is a fist, clenched around something, an outcome, a person, a plan, a version of the future. The knuckles are white, the arm aches. Nothing can be given from that hand, and nothing new can be received into it, because it is entirely occupied with gripping. The second hand is open. Whatever it holds rests on the palm. It can still hold things, real things, heavy things, but it holds without strangling. It can give, it can receive, and it does not ache. Surrender, in the sense the traditions mean, is the movement from the first hand to the second, not dropping what you love, opening around it. Notice what this is not. It is not passivity. The open-handed person still acts, often more effectively than the clenched one, because their energy is no longer consumed by gripping. It is not fatalism. They have not concluded that nothing matters, or that effort is pointless. It is not the abandonment of desire. They still want what they want. The sick still wish to be well. The lonely still long for company. What has changed is the relationship between the wanting and the self. The outcome is desired, pursued, prayed for, and finally, at the edge of what effort can reach, released from the fist into the open palm, held, not gripped. There is a well-loved prayer in the modern world, familiar from recovery rooms and kitchen walls, that asks for serenity to accept what cannot be changed, courage to change what can, and wisdom to know the difference. Its enduring popularity is no accident, because it maps the exact territory we are describing. Life presents every person, every single day, with a mixed parcel. Some things responsive to effort, some things utterly indifferent to it, and a blurry border between them, where most of our anguish lives. The clenched life treats everything as changeable and exhausts itself. The collapsed life treats everything as unchangeable and abandons itself. Wisdom is the endless, imperfect art of sorting the parcel, and surrender is what wisdom does with the second pile. This is why prayer and action were never rivals, despite the popular caricature. The caricature imagines a person who prays instead of acting, kneeling while the house burns. The traditions, at their best, imagine something else entirely, a person who does everything within their power and prays about the remainder. The farmer plows, sows, waters, and prays over the weather, precisely because plowing is his and weather is not. The surgeon's family does not pray instead of consenting to the operation. They consent, and then pray through the hours their hands cannot help. Let it be said one more time, plainly, because it belongs in every honest hour about prayer. Prayer does not replace medical care, professional help, practical responsibility, or honest conversation. A person may pray and still see the doctor. A person may trust and still make the plan. A person may surrender the outcome completely, while acting meaningfully, right up to its edge. Indeed, that combination, full effort and open hands, may be the most complete description of a well-lived day that anyone has ever offered. And here is where surrender reveals its secret kinship with rest, the very thing your body is moving towards as you listen. Because what is falling asleep, if not a nightly surrender? You cannot clench your way into sleep. Every insomniac on earth has proven it. Sleep cannot be forced, commanded, achieved, or won. The harder it is gripped at, the further it recedes. Sleep comes only to the open hand. It requires you to stop supervising the world, to hand the night over to itself, to trust, in the most practical way imaginable, that the sun will manage its own rising, and that tomorrow can be lived tomorrow. Every night of your life, whether you have ever prayed or not, your body has performed this act of trust. You have released consciousness itself, the dearest thing you have, into the dark, on nothing more than the well-founded faith that morning gives it back. Seen this way, sleep is not merely the subject of tonight's journey. It is the oldest surrender you know. You have been practicing it since before you could speak. So when the prayer comes, in a little while, and it moves towards release, towards open hands, towards trusting the night with the unfinished world, understand that nothing foreign is being asked of you. You will simply be doing with awareness and words what your deepest nature has done every night of your life. Laying it down, letting the dark hold it, believing in the morning. There remains only one thing to do before the documentary itself begins to bow out, and the prayer takes the stage. We must return, at last, to the promise of the title, and say exactly what it means. At the beginning of tonight, a promise was made about honesty, and it will be kept now, completely. There is no secret prayer. There is no ancient manuscript, no suppressed scripture, no forbidden formula smuggled through the centuries. The prayer you are about to hear was written for this channel, for this night, for you. It is an original sleep into power prayer. If you came looking for hidden words, you may set that expectation down. The truth on offer is better than the mystery, because the truth is usable. The prayer you were never taught is not a text, it is a direction of travel. Consider everything the night has gathered so far, because it has all been leading here. We saw that prayer is ancient and universal, and that most of us were handed only one room of a very large house, the room of asking. We saw that asking is honorable, and also that it is a doorway rather than a destination. We saw that the words we repeat in the quiet shape the person who repeats them, and that science can watch prayer work within us while remaining silent, in both directions, about what lies beyond us. We saw that gratitude can arrive before the answer, that praying for others rearranges the heart that prays, that unanswered prayer is a mystery that changes people even when it does not change circumstances, and that surrender is not the white flag but the open hand. Draw a line through all of those discoveries, and it points somewhere. It points away from prayer as a transaction, and towards prayer as a transformation. That is the prayer most of us were never taught. Not new words, a new direction. To pray not only to change what happens, but to become someone who can meet what happens. It moves, wherever it is genuinely prayed, from fear towards trust. Fear is not banished. It is acknowledged and then declined the driver's seat. From control towards surrender. Effort keeps its dignity, and the outcome is carried on an open palm. From self-criticism towards forgiveness. The inner voice that prosecutes is gently retired from the night shift. From scarcity towards gratitude. Attention turns from the missing to the given, without lying about either. From confusion towards openness. Not answers on demand, but a willingness to be shown. From restlessness towards peace. The engine allowed, at last, to idle. From asking towards listening. The mouth's prayer making room for the ears. And finally, from words towards silence. Because every tradition's deepest practitioners agree on at least this much. The words are the shoreline, and the ocean is quiet. One more thing must be said before the room grows dim, and it concerns you, specifically, whoever you are. You may be a person of deep religious faith. If so, nothing tonight asks you to dilute it. When the prayer speaks, you will address it exactly where your heart has always addressed itself. To God, as you know and name God. The prayer was written to leave that space fully open, not to paper over it. For you, this may simply be prayer, in the richest sense your tradition has taught you. You may be uncertain, an agnostic, a questioner, someone between traditions or after them. The prayer asks no credentials at the door. You may address it to the divine, to a higher intelligence, to life itself, to whatever listens, if anything listens. Uncertainty spoken honestly into the dark has been a respected form of prayer for as long as prayer has existed. Some of the most moving prayers ever recorded begin, in effect, "I do not know if anyone is there, and here I am anyway." Or you may hold no belief at all, and be here simply for the rest and the ideas. You are equally welcome, and nothing that follows requires your signature. You may receive the prayer as reflection, as poetry, as a guided setting down of the day, as a series of quiet intentions held before sleep. The movements it makes, release, gratitude, forgiveness, trust, rest, are human movements before they are religious ones. They will meet you where you are. However you come to it without performance. There is no correct posture, no required feeling, no standard to meet. You are lying down. Your eyes are closing or closed. That is the whole of the etiquette. The documentary portion of our night is now complete. Everything that needed thinking has been thought. What remains is quieter, slower, and closer to the heart. From here, the voice you are listening to will stop explaining prayer and simply begin to pray, and you may drift wherever the drifting takes you. First, though, let us prepare the room. Let everything begin to soften now. There is nothing you need to do to prepare, in the sense of effort. Preparing for prayer, preparing for sleep, is mostly a matter of allowing. Allowing the body to be heavy. Allowing the pillow to do its ancient work. Allowing the day, at last, to be over. If it feels right, let your body settle a little deeper into the bed. Notice the places where you are held, the mattress beneath you, the covers over you, the pillow accepting the full weight of your head. You do not need to hold your head up anymore. You do not need to hold anything up anymore. The bed has taken over. That is its entire purpose, and it is very good at it. Your breathing does not need to be managed. It has been carrying you all day without instruction, and it will carry you all night the same way. Simply notice it, the slow tide of it, in and out, the small pause at the turn. Each breath out can be a small setting down. Nothing dramatic, just the gentle release of whatever the breath happens to be holding. And now, softly, let the day itself come to completion. Whatever today contained, it is finished now. The conversations that happened are over, and the conversations that did not happen cannot be held tonight. If there are words you wish you had said, or words you wish you had not, they will keep until morning. Words keep very well overnight. Let them rest in a drawer of their own. If there are questions still open, and there usually are, they may remain open. Questions do not need to be guarded while you sleep. They are patient creatures. They will sit quietly in the corner of the night, and any that truly matter will still be there tomorrow, often looking smaller in daylight, sometimes having quietly answered themselves in the dark. If there are tasks unfinished, let them be unfinished. No life has ever reached the evening with everything done. The list is immortal, and it knows it. Tomorrow's portion belongs to tomorrow. Tonight asks nothing of you. There is nothing to solve between now and morning. There is no one you need to be for the next several hours. The performance is over, the costume is off, and the audience has gone home. Even your mistakes, today's and older ones, may stand down for the night. You are not required to review them. The gentle truth is that you have never once improved a mistake by holding it up to the ceiling at midnight. Let them wait in the hallway with everything else. They will be lighter to carry after sleep, if they still need carrying at all. Feel how much has just been set down. The words, the questions, the tasks, the mistakes, the roles. What remains is simply you, breathing, warm, held by the bed, at the quiet center of the night. This is the state the old traditions sought before prayer. Not perfection, just presence. A person, undefended and unhurried, arriving at the edge of the silence with open hands. You are there now, so let the prayer begin. Let it be spoken slowly, on your behalf, and let the words find you wherever you are, on the shoreline of sleep. If you drift while they are spoken, drift. Sleep is not an interruption of this prayer. Sleep is where it is pointing. Tonight, I come to the end of the day with open hands. I release the day now, all of it. The parts that went well, which I do not need to replay, and the parts that went badly, which I do not need to relive. The day is complete, exactly as it was, and I let it become the past, where it belongs, where it can rest, where it no longer needs anything from me. I release the weight of everything I do not need to carry into tomorrow. The conversations I cannot change, the words already spoken, mine and everyone else's, the questions I cannot yet answer, and the answers I am not yet ready to hear. The future I do not need to control tonight, and could not control anyway, and was never asked to carry alone. I release the pressure to have it all resolved. I have been carrying tomorrow around all day like a second body, and I set it down now. Tomorrow is not mine yet. Tonight is mine, and tonight only asks me to rest. I release my grip on the people I worry about. Not my love for them, never that. Only the gripping, the rehearsing, the midnight managing of lives that are not mine to manage. I place them, each one, in hands larger and gentler than my own, and I let my worrying end where my loving continues. And as the day drains out of my hands, I notice what is left in them. Life. Simply life. Still here. Still moving through me. Breath after breath. After everything. Thank you for this life. Thank you for the breath that has carried me through this day without once asking for my attention, and for the heart that has kept its faithful time since before I had a name. Thank you for this body, imperfect, tired, aging, extraordinary, which has brought me through every single day I have ever had, including the ones I thought would end me. Thank you for the people who have loved me, the ones still here, whose voices I can hear tomorrow if I choose, the ones who are gone, whose love did not leave when they did, but stayed behind in me, woven into how I speak, how I care, how I carry on. I am a walking anthology of everyone who ever loved me, and tonight I am grateful for every page. Thank you for the lessons that strengthened me, even the ones I would never have chosen and would not wish on anyone. I do not call the pain good. I only notice that I am still here, and that something in me is deeper for the distance traveled. Thank you for the ordinary mercies I forget to count. Water, warmth, a bed, this pillow, the ceiling that has kept every storm on the correct side of it, the astonishing, unearned fact of another day, given whole in the morning, and now handed back, used, at night. And thank you for the possibilities I cannot yet see. Tomorrow is not empty. It only looks empty because it has not been unwrapped. Somewhere in it are moments that will matter, kindnesses coming towards me, and kindnesses leaving from me, and I give thanks for them now, in advance, sight unseen. Out of this gratitude, I find the courage for something harder. Tonight, I turn towards myself, and I make peace. I forgive myself. I forgive myself for the mistakes I made when I did not know better, and for the ones I made when I did. I was not finished then. I am not finished now. A person still under construction cannot be judged as a completed building, and I am, all of us are, still deep in the building years. I forgive myself for the times I was afraid, when I wished I had been brave. Fear was never a crime. It was only ever a signal that something mattered. I have been brave more often than I remember, and afraid more often than I admit. And both of those people were me, and both were doing their best with what they had that day. I forgive myself for the time I feel I have wasted, the paths not taken, the years I judge harshly from here. I did not have then what I have now, and it is unjust to sentence my past with evidence that only arrived later. Whatever those years were, they carried me here, to this bed, to this night, still breathing, still willing to grow. That is not nothing. That may even be everything. I forgive myself for not being further along. There is no schedule. There never was one. The deadline I keep missing was invented by no one and enforced by no one but me. And tonight I let it expire. And I retire. For this night, the voice inside me that prosecutes. It has said everything it has to say, many times, and it may rest now too. Tonight I will speak to myself the way I would speak to someone I love who could not sleep, gently or not at all. From this softness towards myself, I find I can be softer towards others. Tonight, I loosen my grip on the ledger of wrongs. Those who hurt me, knowingly or carelessly, I begin to release. Not because it did not matter. It mattered, not because they were right. They may have been entirely wrong. I release them because I am the one carrying the weight, and I am tired, and the carrying was never bringing me anything but the weight itself. Forgiveness, tonight, is not a verdict on them. It is a kindness to me. It is my own shoulders, finally allowed to come down from around my ears, where I cannot yet forgive, and there may be rooms of my heart where I cannot. I ask only for willingness. Let me not force what is not ready. Let me simply leave the door unlocked, so that when forgiveness comes, whenever it comes, this year or in 10, it can let itself in without knocking. And where I have hurt others, and I have, because everyone has, I hold them in this quiet now, and wish them healing, wherever they are, whatever they remember. May the harm I caused grow smaller in their lives. May they be free of it. May I learn from it what it came to teach, and then may I be free of it too. I release the old arguments that still hold rehearsals in my head. The case is closed for the night. Both lawyers may go home. Now in this cleaner, lighter quiet, I look honestly at what I cannot see, which is almost everything, and I ask for peace inside the not knowing. I do not know what tomorrow holds. I do not know how the things I am waiting for will resolve. The results, the answers, the decisions being made in rooms I will never enter. Tonight, I stop pretending that vigilance is the same thing as influence. My watching does not steer the world. It only steals my rest. So let me be at peace with uncertainty. Tonight at least. Let the unknown be what it has always actually been. Not a threat gathering in the dark, but simply the shape of the future before it arrives. The same shape every good thing wore before it reached me. Every joy I have ever had was once an uncertainty. Let me remember that the unknown delivers gifts at least as often as it delivers weather, and where real difficulty stands in my life right now, not imagined difficulty, but the true kind, the kind with a name, I do not ask to be excused from it, because I know that is not always how life works. I ask instead for strength. Give me strength measured to the day, not the whole journey's strength tonight, which no one can carry, but tomorrow's portion, delivered with the morning, the way it has somehow always been delivered before. I look back and see that I have survived every difficult day I have ever had, every single one. The evidence of my own life says that strength arrives. Let me trust the pattern. Give me endurance that does not harden me, and softness that does not break me. Let me be like the tree that survives the storm, not by refusing to move, but by knowing how to bend. And on the days I cannot be strong, let me be honest instead, and let honesty call for help, and let help come. Needing others was never a failure. It is the design. And because strength without direction only wanders, I ask now for guidance. Guide my thoughts towards wisdom, away from the loops that go nowhere, the imagined arguments, the rehearsed disasters, and towards the few thoughts that actually feed me. Let my mind become a place I can live in comfortably, since I live nowhere else. Guide my words. Let me say less that wounds and more that heals. Let me be slower to correct, and quicker to understand. Let something kind leave my mouth tomorrow that would not have left it today. Guide my steps. I do not ask to see the whole road. I have learned that the whole road is never shown to anyone, and that this is probably a mercy. I ask only for the next step, lit well enough to take it, and the honesty to take it when it is lit. Help me recognize the moment when it comes, in a feeling, in a conversation, in a door that opens quietly off to the side of the plan, and help me tell the difference between the fear that warns and the fear that merely blocks, between the wanting that is mine and the wanting I inherited from noise. Where I must act, give me courage to act. Where I must wait, give me the harder courage of waiting. And in the wide grey country between the two, where most of life is lived, give me patience with my own uncertainty, and the wisdom that grows there and nowhere else. Now I ask for healing, and I ask for it humbly, with open hands. Heal my body where it needs healing. Let this night's sleep do its deep and ancient work, the mending that happens only in the dark, cell by cell, without any help from me. Let me stop supervising, and let the body do what it has always known. Heal my mind where it is tired, and it is tired. Smooth what the day has crumpled. Quiet what the year has made loud. Let the worn places be worn gently, the way stones are worn by water, into something smoother than they began. Heal my heart where it is broken, and take your time, because hearts heal slowly and pretend quickly, and I would rather have the slow truth than the quick pretense. Where I carry grief, I do not ask for it to be taken away, because my grief is made of my love, and I would not surrender the love to be rid of the weight. I ask only that the weight become carryable, that grief and I learn to walk at the same pace, that the memories turn, in their own season, from knives into windows. And where healing does not come the way I hope, in my body, in my circumstances, in people I cannot repair, let a different healing come. The healing called peace, the healing called acceptance, the healing that changes not the wound, but the way I am able to live around it. I have seen people healed this way, while everything visibly stayed the same, and they shone. If that is the healing available, I will not refuse it. Now let my prayer grow larger than my own life, because my life has never been only mine. I bring the people I love into this quiet. Watch over my family, near and far, easy and difficult, and let each of them be, tonight, exactly what I hope someone is asking for me. Safe, warm, breathing slowly, held. Whatever was unresolved between us today, let it wait gently. Love is not cancelled by friction. Beneath our complications, let the love stay louder. Watch over my friends, the ones I spoke to this week, and the ones I have carelessly let drift into silence. Distance was never the end of anything. Let them feel, from somewhere, the goodwill I am sending now, and let the drifted ones and I find our way back while there is time, because there is still time, and watch over the people who once belonged to my life and no longer do, however the parting happened. Old friends, old loves, people who knew a younger version of me that no one else remembers. Wherever they are tonight, under whatever roof, let them be well. They carried pieces of my story away with them, as I carried pieces of theirs. And I find, in this quiet, that I want those pieces to be resting somewhere kind. Not everyone is meant to stay, and I release the old ache of that. But no one who mattered ever fully leaves. And tonight, I bless every borrowed chapter, every person who was, for a season, home. Watch over the people who are suffering tonight, the ones I know by name, and the millions I will never know. The ones in hospitals, listening to machines mark the hours. The ones lying awake beside a silent phone. The ones grieving so newly that sleep itself feels like a betrayal. The ones far from home, or without one, for whom night is not soft. I cannot reach them, but I refuse to believe that means nothing can be offered. So I offer this, my remembering. May help find them. May kindness ambush them. May the night be gentler than they expect, and the morning kinder than the forecast. And watch over the difficult people, mine and everyone's. They were not born difficult. Something happened, as something has happened to us all. May whatever hurt them loosen. It would make the world quieter, one heart at a time, and mine can be one of the hearts. Having loved outward, I ask now to live outward. Give my life purpose, and let me stop demanding that purpose announce itself with trumpets. I have spent years listening for a calling loud enough to be unmistakable, and it occurs to me tonight that callings may be quiet things, easily talked over. Perhaps my purpose has been hiding in plain sight all along, in the way I steady the people around me, in the small work done well when no one is checking, in the kindness that costs me 30 seconds and changes someone's entire day. So let me do meaningful things tomorrow, even small ones, especially small ones. Let me be the reason one moment of one person's day is lighter. Let me finish something honest, mend something torn, notice someone unnoticed. Small things done with full presence have a weight that grand things done distractedly never manage, and a life stacked out of such days does not need a trumpet. Let me leave the people I touch slightly better than I find them, and let me be patient with the slowness of a purpose that reveals itself one ordinary morning at a time. If my life preaches anything, let it preach gently, by how it is lived. And when I doubt that my presence matters, remind me of the people whose quiet presence has mattered to me, none of whom ever knew it, all of whom shaped me. Let me trust that I am already that person in lives I cannot see, and give me what I need to live it. I ask for abundance, and I ask carefully, because I have learned what I actually mean by it. I do not mean piles of glittering things. I mean enough, and a margin, security enough that fear is not my landlord, opportunity enough that my abilities have somewhere to go, freedom enough to give my time to what matters and my presence to who matters, and generosity, always generosity, because I have noticed that the happiest hands are the ones that pass things on. If more flows to me, let more flow through me. Let me be a channel and not a vault, and give me the wisdom to use well whatever I am given, because resources without wisdom have never yet made anyone rich. Where doors are meant to open for me, let me be awake enough to see them, and bold enough to walk through while they are open. Where doors close, let me waste less of my life knocking, and trust that closed doors are also information. And now, as sleep comes nearer and my words grow simpler, I come to the deepest asking of all, which is barely asking anymore. I choose to trust what I cannot yet see, not because I am certain, I am not certain, I choose trust the way a sailor chooses the sea, knowing it is larger than he is, knowing the far shore is real, although invisible from here. Everything good in my life was once invisible from where I stood. This bed, this roof, the people I love, none of it could be seen from the far side of the years that led here, and yet here it all is. The invisible has a good record with me. Tonight, I extend it credit one more time. Seeds are working in my life right now that I cannot see. Conversations I have forgotten are still traveling. Kindnesses I planted carelessly are growing in other people's gardens. Let me stop digging everything up to check the roots. Let the unseen work be trusted to work unseen. And what I cannot control, I now, finally, accept. I cannot control other people. I release them to their own roads. I cannot control the past. It has been carved, and I lay down the chisel I keep picking up. I cannot control time, or weather, or the great slow turnings of the world. I resign, tonight, from all the departments I was never hired into. What has left my life does not take my entire future with it. What I cannot understand tonight may become clearer in time, and if it never becomes clear, let me live well beside the mystery, the way people have always lived beside the sea, not understanding it, loving it anyway. I am grateful for what has been. I am present with what is. I remain open to what may come. And so I turn, at last, to tomorrow, only to greet it, not to live it. Tomorrow, I will be someone who slept. That is the whole of tonight's contribution to tomorrow, and it is enough. I do not need to be better by morning. I do not need answers by morning. Morning asks only that I arrive, and sleep is how I will travel there. Let tomorrow come as it wishes. I will meet it rested. And now, the last permission, the one I have needed all day. I am allowed to rest, not because everything is finished. Nothing is ever finished. I am allowed to rest because I am a living creature, and the night has come. The same reason the birds are allowed, and the fields, and the sea. Rest was never a wage to be earned. It was a gift given with the body, written into me, before I did a single thing to deserve anything. Tonight I stop negotiating with it and simply accept. For too long I have treated rest as the reward at the end of a list that never ends. And so the reward never came, and I called that discipline. It was not discipline. It was only tiredness with a flag in it. Let me learn the older wisdom that rest is not the opposite of my work, but the soil of it. That everything I hope to give tomorrow is being grown tonight, in the dark, while I do nothing at all. The fields lie fallow and call it wisdom. The tide goes out and is not ashamed. Even light, they say, takes the long way round. I am in good company when I stop. I give this body permission to be heavy. I give this mind permission to close its doors, one by one, and leave them closed until light. I give this heart permission to stop keeping watch. Nothing will be lost while I sleep. The world has been running for a very long time, and has learned to manage a few hours without me. Sleep, come as you please. I am not chasing you tonight. I am only lying here, with the door open, grateful in advance, drifting on breath, held by the dark, as the dark holds everything, gently, until morning. Tonight I release. Tonight I trust. Tonight I rest. The spoken prayer is complete now, and in the traditions that have traveled furthest into this territory, something is taught about the moment we have just reached. They teach that when the words end, the prayer does not. The words, they say, are the vessel. What the vessel carried remains here, in the quiet, after the vessel is set down. You do not need to do anything with this. It is not another task. It is the opposite of a task. It is what is left when the last task ends. There is a kind of listening that is not waiting for anything, not straining towards a voice, not expecting an answer shaped like words. Just the ear of the heart, open, the way a window is open on a summer night. Whatever moves through it, moves through it. Nothing is demanded of the night, and the night demands nothing back. Some who pray have said that this is where they finally understood what they had been doing all along. that the speaking was the approach, and the silence was the arriving. They found they could rest there, in the presence of the mystery, without needing the mystery to explain itself. The way you can sit with an old friend and say nothing, and the nothing is full. Your questions are still here, somewhere in the dark. They have not been solved tonight. They were never going to be solved tonight, and it turns out that was never the requirement. Silence, this kind of silence, does not answer questions. It holds them, the way water holds a boat. No effort, just held. Let yourself be held the same way. The breath continues on its own. Slow tide in, slow tide out. It needs no supervision, and neither, anymore, do you. Thoughts may still drift past. Let them be weather. Clouds crossing a sky that is not troubled by clouds and does not chase them, because the sky knows something the clouds do not. The sky knows it will still be here, after every one of them has passed. You are the sky now, not the weather. Somewhere beneath the words of the prayer, beneath even the silence, there is a place in you that has never been worried. It was there before tonight. It was there before every hard year you have ever had, untouched, the deep still floor beneath all the moving water. You do not have to find it. You are sinking towards it now, on your own, the way everything heavy and warm sinks through water, slowly, safely, down towards the still place. Nothing to hold, nothing to finish, nothing to say. The prayer is being prayed by your breathing now. That is enough. That was always going to be enough. The night is deep around you now, and everything is done. The day is complete. Not perfect, complete. It has been lived, all the way to its end, and it asks nothing more of you. Days never do, once they are over. Only minds ask, and yours is being excused now, with thanks, from every remaining duty. Tomorrow does not need to be lived tonight. It is not waiting impatiently. It is not even here yet. It is somewhere over the curve of the world, unhurried, and when it arrives, it will find you rested, which is the only preparation it ever wanted. Your unanswered questions may wait. They are patient. They will keep beside you like books on a bedside table, closed, their places marked, ready whenever you are, and not a moment before. Nothing more needs to be proved, not to anyone, not to yourself. The case is adjourned. The building is dark. Everyone has gone home, and sleep does not need to be forced. It was never something you did. It is something you allow, the way you allow evening, the way you allow rain. It is already on its way to you, moving up through the heaviness in your legs, along your arms, across your shoulders, unhurried, certain, kind. Thoughts may still come. Let them come, and let them go, unfollowed. You are done following things for today. The bed holds you, the dark holds the bed, and something, whatever name you gave it tonight, or gave it long ago, or never named at all, holds the dark. You are inside, held inside, held inside, held, breathing slow, growing warm, sinking soft. Everything you released tonight stays released. Everything you asked for has been asked. Everything you gave thanks for is still true. And the rest, all of it, every last unfinished thing, is now the night's to carry, not yours. Let go of the listening too, whenever you like. Even this voice is only walking you to the door. You are safe. You are tired. You are allowed. Sleep into power, guys. Good night.
you.